All right, let's dive in. Today, we are jumping into one of the biggest debates in the entire world of software, the epic showdown between two completely different ways of building things.
And it really all starts with this question. How in the world do companies like Netflix or Uber or Amazon actually build the software that runs, well, everything? The answer reveals this fundamental choice that every single software team eventually has to make.
And that choice, it boils down to these two paths. On one hand, you've got the monolith. Think of it as one single, giant, all-in-one application. And on the other hand, you have microservices, which is more like a whole ecosystem of tiny, independent services that all have to work together. So this is the central battle, right? Let's break down each side, starting with the OG, the classic.
Okay, let's start with the monolith. And for the longest time, this was pretty much the only way you built software. And honestly, for some really good reasons. It's all about simplicity.
So what exactly is a monolith? Well, imagine your banking app. In a monolith, everything from logging you in to processing a transaction to generating your monthly statement, it's all packed together. It's one big, indivisible program, and all those parts talk to the same single database. Everything is self-contained, all in one box.
And you can see why this is so appealing, right? Especially when you're just getting started. Development is super fast because everything's in one spot. Making sure your data stays consistent, that's actually pretty straightforward. A single transaction can update everything it needs to, and if something goes wrong, the whole thing just rolls back cleanly. And running it? It's a dream. You've got one code base to worry about, and you deploy one single thing. Simple as that.
But, and there's always a but, right? Here's the problem. As that simple little app starts to grow, it turns into this giant, complex beast. And all that beautiful simplicity, it suddenly becomes a massive bottleneck. Adding new features feels like wading through mud. Deployments, they become these super risky all-or-nothing events. And you can't just scale up one part of it. Nope, you have to scale the entire thing, which is just incredibly wasteful.
And this is exactly where our second contender makes its grand entrance. Microservices kind of burst onto the scene as this new hope for all those companies who were struggling under the weight of their own success, promising a totally new way to build for massive scale.
And look, the promise here is so appealing. You can totally see why everyone got excited. Instead of scaling the whole app, you just boost the power to the one little service that's getting hammered with traffic. If, say, your report generator service goes down, who cares? It doesn't take the rest of the system with it. People can still log in. And maybe the biggest deal of all, small, independent teams can just go. They can build and deploy their own features on their own schedules without having to coordinate this massive release with everybody else. It's a total game changer for speed.
Okay, that sounds perfect, right? Like, why would you do anything else? So what's the catch? Well, as it turns out, there's this pretty significant hidden cost, something folks like to call the microservices tax.
So, this microservices tax, you pay for all that awesome flexibility with just a mountain of new complexity. All those things that were super easy in the monolith world, like making sure your data is consistent or just figuring out what went wrong when there's a bug, suddenly become incredibly hard when your system is spread out across dozens or even hundreds of different services.
Okay, this diagram right here, it's the perfect example of that complexity. In a monolith, booking a trip is dead simple. It's one transaction, done. But in a microservices world, it can turn into what's called a saga. So let's walk through this. Your app talks to the car service, books a car, success. Then it talks to the hotel service, books a hotel, success. But then it tries to book the flight and, oh no, it fails. The flight's sold out. Now what? Well, the whole system has to go backwards and has to run these compensating actions to undo what it just did. It has to tell the hotel service, hey, cancel that booking. And then tell the car service, you know what, cancel that car. It's this whole complicated dance just to keep things from getting messed up.
And all of this complexity, it points to a much deeper truth, something that goes way beyond just the technology. Turns out the choice between monoliths and microservices, it's not really about code. It's about people. It's about how your teams are structured and how they talk to each other.
And this leads us to this fascinating, almost philosophical idea from way back in 1967. It's called Conway's Law. And what it says is basically this. Any system you design, its structure is going to end up being a mirror image of your organization's communication structure. Think about that. If you have teams that work in silos that have to go through 5 layers of management to talk to each other, you're going to build a big, clunky, siloed monolith. It's almost inevitable. So here's the big brain move. The key insight: if you want to build independent microservices, you can't just start with the code. You have to start by building independent teams. This is what people call the inverse Conway maneuver. You literally change your org chart first. You create these small, empowered, autonomous teams that have everything they need, and then you let them build the architecture you want. The tech follows the teams, not the other way around. It's a huge shift in thinking.
Okay, so if the right answer depends so much on your organization, how do you actually decide? How do real-world companies figure this out? Well, it turns out the best approach is a pragmatic one. You just have to pick the right tool for the job at hand.
I mean, just look at some of these real-world examples. You have Uber, who ended up with something like 2,200 microservices, a total mess, and they had to invent this new domain architecture just to get a handle on the chaos. Netflix uses this central orchestrator to manage all the complex steps involved in getting a movie onto your screen. And then you get the real shocker. The team at Amazon Prime Video that handles their monitoring, they actually switched back to a monolith, and their costs dropped by 90%. Why? Because for their specific problem, all the chatter between the services was just too much overhead.
So yeah, this just proves there is no single best answer. It's not that simple. So how do you choose for your project? Well, this checklist is a really good place to start. Got a small team, like under 10 or 15 people? A monolith is almost always the right call. It's just simpler. Your business problem isn't that complicated? Stick with a monolith. But if you know you need to scale different parts of your system at different rates, and this is key, you have a really mature DevOps culture with lots of automation, then yeah, microservices might be for you. And on the flip side, if you absolutely cannot have inconsistent data, even for a second, a monolith makes that a whole lot easier to guarantee.
And that really brings us to the big takeaway here. The whole debate, it isn't really monolith versus microservices. It's not a binary choice. It's a spectrum. The goal isn't to be cool or modern by picking one over the other. The goal is to be smart. It's to pick the architecture that actually makes sense for your team, for your business complexity, and for what you need to do right now. So I'm going to leave you with one final question to think about, one that brings it all back to Conway's Law. Take a hard look at your own company, your own team. Is the way you're all organized, is that structure helping your software thrive? Is it making things flexible and resilient, or is it actually hurting it? Is it forcing your code into a box that's just holding everyone back? The answer to that question might be more important than any line of code you'll ever write. Thanks for joining us.